And it takes about 15 to 20 seconds to get going, so we'll have a little bit of silence.
Good to go.
Okay. Good evening to councillors, officers and our community members in attendance tonight. I also want to welcome members of the public who are attending online and those live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Christine Olaris. I'm the Mayor of Darebin City Council and the chairperson of tonight's meeting. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight, and I declare the meeting open at 6:02 p.m. The meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be made available on the Council's website as soon as is practicable after the meeting. I will start by just acknowledging that we are meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, who are the traditional owners of this land, and I recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd like to also welcome and acknowledge the councillors and executive leadership team, staff and municipal monitors who are joining us this evening. And we have no apologies for this evening's meeting. So we will move on to disclosures of conflicts of interest. So if any councillor or relevant staff member has a conflict of interest in relation to any matter on the agenda tonight, they must disclose the conflict of interest and the nature of the conflict of interest. I also remind you that any conflicts of interest must also be declared immediately prior to the item being considered. Councillors and officers, are there any conflicts to declare? Councillor Dimitriadis?
Mayor, I may potentially have a conflict for item 8, but I'll talk about that when we get to item 8. Thanks.
Sorry, I missed the end of that.
I'm happy to let you know about it once we get to the item.
Okay. Okay. If during the course of the meeting any motion or amendment is put forward that gives rise to a conflict of interest, I request the councillor advise me at that time. Okay, so up to confirmation of the minutes. Okay. So there is a motion up on the screen. Going ahead with that? Yep. Okay. Is anyone prepared to move that motion? Councillor Selkos. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arturi.
Sorry, Mayor. There is an error in the minutes of the previous meeting.
Yes, sorry, through you, Mayor. I think with that error, we will address it in the governance report for next meeting, just so we need to do some background work on checking the information. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. The next item is our health and safety responsibilities. Council does have a responsibility to ensure everyone attending tonight's meeting feels safe both physically and emotionally. It's great to see so many people here tonight, and I'd like to remind everyone in attendance to be respectful to one another. As outlined in our governance rules, can you also please note the following? So we do require there to be silence in the gallery at all times. A councillor or any other person who addresses the meeting must do so in a courteous and respectful manner and take direction from the chairperson whenever called on to do so. Anyone attending the meeting must not utter any offensive or indecent or insulting language, words that are racist, sexist, homophobic, or interject or gesticulate offensively in the council chamber. If anyone engages in any conduct that is improper or disorderly, the chairperson may direct that person to cease their conduct and the person must comply with that direction. Okay, we're going to move on to public question time. We've got quite a number of questions tonight, so if we do go beyond the 30 minutes, I might require someone to put forward a procedural motion before that time. So we've allowed 30 minutes. In line with council governance rules, no questions will be taken from people in the gallery unless they were submitted by 12 noon today. You can ask 3 questions and you cannot speak for more than 2 minutes, and there's a timer up that you can keep an eye on. Be mindful, this is question time, so only ask questions, not make statements. And questions relating to notices of motion, we don't have any this evening, but petitions or urgent business will not be accepted in accordance with the governance rules. For members of the public who have registered to ask a question in person, I'll call your name when it's time. And if I call your name and you don't respond, I'll take it that you're not in the gallery and one of our officers will read the question and you'll get an answer provided. When I call you, whether you be in person or virtually attending, I'll invite you to come and unmute your microphone and state your name and ask your question. And we do tend to group like questions together. I think we've given a bit of leeway to that this evening. So there might be some that are a bit repetitive. So really just to make sure everyone is heard. So we'll get started. So let me see. First up we have Michael, our CEO, who's going to say a few words.
Thanks so much, Mayor. So as the Mayor alluded to, we have a number of questions this evening covering the Preston Activity Centre and the state planning controls, which will have similar answers and we may group them together. However, we will give everyone a chance to read their question. There will be repetitive answers like we have done previously, but you will all get an answer, I promise you. Item 9.2 on tonight's agenda puts into the public realm a submission made by the officers during what's known as caretaker period or election period last year. And tonight seeks council endorsement on that submission that's going forward. Much has progressed in the past week, with council generally only being advised hours before formal announcements. Therefore, we continue to monitor those and work with the Victorian Planning Authority and the Department of Transport and Planning and to understand all of the details associated with all of these announcements. We encourage the community to stay informed via council and the state government announcements and websites and to make clear your views to both levels of government. We undertake significant consultation, in particular with major and strategic planning matters, and will continue to do so as we've always done. Thanks, Mayor, but we will give everyone the opportunity to ask their question, as I said, particularly around all of those.
Okay, so the first person to get to ask a question is Sandra Lee. Oh, attending virtually? She hasn't joined us, so perhaps we'll get one of this. Jodie is going to read the question. Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Sandra has a couple of questions. The first being, to what extent is Council aware of the weight of evidence supporting the correlation between car dependency and bankruptcy on a city level, i.e. that it is practically impossible for revenue to keep up with the long-term costs of maintaining car infrastructure as required by a car-dependent city and population? Sandra's second question is, does Council have any current plans to reduce car dependency in favour of an increase in the quantity and quality of public transit in more car dependent and less accessible suburban neighbourhoods?
Okay, and I think that's Vanessa Petrie is going to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Sandra, and through you, Mayor. Maintaining assets and infrastructure is a challenge facing all local governments. Our current transport strategy seeks to plan well as our city grows and increase the role of sustainable transport. Early work has started on the next land use and transport strategy, and this work will continue to consider all aspects of providing and maintaining a transport system into the future. And regarding your second question, our current transport strategy has actions for improved and expanded public transport networks. We will continue to work with our state government partners to seek improvements to public transport services they control.
Thank you. We've now got Linda Ho. Linda here? Yep, thank you, Linda. You've got 2 minutes.
Hi everyone. My main question is about the Activity Learning Centre, with Preston being a key suburb. Most of my questions about that planning thing is, Preston's a really small area. There's only 2 public high schools, a private high school campus, 10 primary schools, 10 childcare early learning centres, 7 medical centres which are at capacity and with long wait lists. So we're meant to have a possible extra 15,000 dwellings built along High Street, which could mean up to an extra 40,000 plus people. Roads are already bottlenecked. Public transport is okay, but how are we going to accommodate for all these extra people when we don't actually have social infrastructure in place for the existing people? Preston Market, there hasn't been much talk about whether it's going to be maintained in its own form. And there's been talks about community consultation, and I've noticed I'm probably the only person of Asian descent here. So how are you actually reaching out to people who are non-English speaking?
Thank you, Linda. I think this is also over to Vanessa Petrie.
Thanks, Linda, for your question. And through you, Mayor, the State Government's Department of Transport and Planning is updating planning controls for Preston Activity Centre and was responsible for the community consultation on the draft plans. And so they're best placed to answer questions about how this was run. What I can share is that prior to the state government's work, Council conducted 2 rounds of community consultation for its Preston Central Activity Centre structure plan. This included 2 rounds of community consultation, including workshops with CALD and First Nations community members and translations into 12 languages.
Can I ask how many people of the community were there?
Thanks for that question. I'll need to take that on notice, but I will have a member of our team contact you and they can share a bit more information about the consultation that Council undertook.
Is that all?
No,
It was a
and
bit more.
sorry, Linda, your second question. This is also a light question from Victoria and also Zoe. Council has consistently advocated to the state government that the Activity Centre program needs to support new and upgraded local infrastructure to meet the needs of the growing population. The state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds for infrastructure, including transport, schools, open spaces, community and health facilities. And these will start being collected from the 1st of January in 2027. There is a municipal-wide and a Preston Market Precinct development contributions plan in place to help council fund local infrastructure such as paths, road and community infrastructure.
Thank you. Okay, we have Victoria Thieberger. Not attending. May I have her question read out, please, Jodie?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. From Victoria, regarding the proposed extra development of Preston, what promises has the state government given the council regarding extra train and tram services, extra primary and secondary school places and extra GPs? If no extra services are promised, why has the council agreed to the development? And what percentage will be social housing, or is it all for the profit of developers?
Vanessa.
Thank you, Victoria, for your question, and through you, Mayor. The question is similar to the one that was just asked by Linda. To summarise, the state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds for infrastructure, including transport, schools, open spaces, community and health facilities. And again, these will be collected from the 1st of January. And regarding your second question, percentage of social housing, Council's endorsed principles and priorities includes that the plan for Preston Central must include social and affordable housing. Only a summary of plans has been released so far. The plan does not yet include any details about new social housing on public land nor social housing on private land.
Thank you. We have Zoe Bunworth, who is also not attending. Could have the question read out, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. From Zoe, I would like to know how Council plans to manage the increased need for maintenance of existing and for providing new amenities for the community in Preston, as the expectation due to the density increase will also increase use of roads, doctors, schools, etc. How do you propose to maintain the current the current atmosphere and living standards? I also want to ask Council why the Council seems to have dropped the movement for the state to acquire the Preston Market, as it is a huge boon for the area and will be even more needed as the population increases in density. We will never be able to build another market. Please, I implore you to keep the one we have as it is.
Vanessa Petrie.
Thank you, Zoe, for your question. And it's similar to the one that was asked by Linda and Victoria. Through you, Mayor, in summary, Council has advocated to the state government that the Activity Centre program needs to support new and upgraded local infrastructure to meet the needs of the growing population. Regarding your second question, the state government finalised planning controls for Preston Market in 2023. Strong planning protections are in place for the market, including a heritage overlay, to ensure that the market is substantially retained in its current form and place. An independent planning panel found these controls will facilitate a thriving and an ongoing market operation.
Okay, we have David Taylor next. David is in the room. So you've got 2 minutes, David.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 questions. One, in the agenda papers for the previous council meeting, it was stated that, quote, in 2023, VAGO made a recommendation to councils to undertake a review and assessment of all grants and funding arrangements, end quote. Yet in May 2022, VAGO published a report entitled Fraud Control over Local Government Grants. It recommended that all Victorian councils, quote, evaluate the benefits of recurring grants and require recipients to seek future funding through existing competitive grant programs, end quote. Is this 2022 VAGO recommendation the one upon which Darebin has relied in relation to the DCMC MOU issue? 2, if Darebin is relying on this 2022 VAGO recommendation, and given the elapse of nearly 3 years, have the recommended evaluations taken place? Have they been made public? And have all recipients of recurring grants been notified accordingly? 3, as it would appear that VAGO recommendations are not legally binding on councils, what is their exact status for Darebin?
Thank you, David. Rachel Olivier will answer this one. Thank you.
Hi, David. Thank you for the questions, and through you, Mayor. So the reference to the VAGO report in the report to the council meeting last week was to explain the context and background, and you're correct, the report we are referring to is the one from 2002, so it's the same one. In terms of what we've relied on, however, it's the more recent work that was outlined in that report, so a range of legal advice predominantly. Council will consider a further report in August 2025 following some additional work. So we're doing some more work now to make sure that we do understand all of the options. In terms of your second question about the evaluations that have taken place since that VAGO report, in regards to the DCMC site, Banyule City Council, in partnership with Darebin, engaged an external consultant to undertake an independent audit relating to DCMC. That report identified a range of risks and it was shared directly with the DCMC and was tabled confidentially and accepted at a council meeting in October 2023. Since then, we've done further work to address the risks and also to understand how a number of the obligations identified by that work apply in these particular circumstances. And the sort of latest update around all of that is in that report to council last week. In terms of more broadly in regards to recurring grants, after the VAGO report came out, Darebin took the opportunity to review its community grants framework. It was aiming essentially to look at some of the risks and recommendations out of that report to check that the framework was well designed, mitigated fraud, and was operating as intended. The review found there were no major concerns, but a number of improvement opportunities. It wasn't necessary to update community grant recipients, that the grants program's on a cyclical process in any case, and improvements were incorporated into the grant round when it was next advertised. And your last question about VAGO recommendations and whether they're legally binding. The recommendations themselves aren't legally binding, but some of them identify risks that are compliance issues that relate to how councils are managing their work in relation to legislative obligations. And so a number of the risks we must address. And essentially, in the case of the review that VAGO did in 2022, Council took the opportunity to review that audit afterwards and do a self-assessment to identify if any of those are relevant to Darebin. It's a process we use with most VAGO audits, and it's a very common process in the sector.
Thank you. The next questioner, Jess Barry, is not attending, so I'll need her question to be read out, please, Jodie.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Jess's questions relate to a planning application D546 of 2024 at 64 Thackeray Road Reservoir. We would like an update as to our objections and an update on the heritage status of the house. We request an independent heritage assessment and protective overlay applied to the California bungalow at this address. Time is of the essence, as we have observed the owner/developers allowing the garden to die, heard an alarm going off repeatedly, and someone entering the house and smashing things. We don't want to lose this house to deliberate negligence. Her second question is, the State Government Activity Centre changes to planning in Darebin. Are the council able to guarantee, 1, a minimum mandated amount of social and or affordable housing? None is currently mandated. 2, more information on non-compliant builds being deemed to comply. 3, an overlay to protect our heritage shops and houses from destruction, the Preston Market included. And 4, adequate infrastructure and green space to offset the addition of 15,000 additional dwellings. And that's all.
Thank you. And I think this one's back to Vanessa Petrie.
Thank you, Jess, for your questions. And through you, Mayor, an officer, regarding your first question, Jess, an officer from the statutory planning team will call you within the next 24 hours to discuss your objection and the heritage status of the dwellings and whether they have potentially been considered for heritage protection. Regarding your second question, Council is advocating to the state government that the plan for Preston Central includes social and affordable housing. Only a summary of plans have been released by the state government so far. The state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds for infrastructure, including transport, schools, open spaces, community and health facilities, and these will be collected from the 1st of January 27.
Thank you. Chris Erlinson. Thank you, Chris. You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, Chris Erlinson from Preston. My understanding is that the open space levy that council collects from developers is currently redistributed to offset the massive debt from the Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre rebuild. Can the community be assured that the open space levy in future will be collected from development in Preston Activity Centre, including the Preston Market Precinct, be spent specifically in Central Preston? That's question 1. Question 2, will council make a clear statement regarding the future status of Preston Oval? And question 3, why hasn't council considered reclassifying Preston Market as recreational open space that could facilitate a campaign to seek funding and investment from the state and federal governments that would make Preston Market the breathing space of Preston and guarantee its future as the public benefit?
Thank you, Chris. This is Rachel Olivia. Oh, for the first bit. Sure.
Thanks, Mayor. Hi, Chris. So your question about the open space levy. So I can clarify there was a contribution from the open space levy in 2022-23. That contributed 17% of the construction costs of NARC. There isn't any ongoing contribution from the levy towards NARC or loan repayments. And it's really normal for the open space levy to contribute to recreational facilities. It's part of the purpose of the levy. In terms of your question about allocating levy from the Preston Activity Centre to the Preston area, we don't specifically allocate the levy to particular regions, but generally it contributes to improvements right across the city. And the process council uses for that allocation and those decisions about where and which facilities is its long-term and annual budgeting and capital works budget process. In terms of your question about a clear statement regarding the future of the Preston Oval, the Oval is a regional level sports ground. It also provides public open space use, and that sort of direction about that is contained in council's open space strategy at the moment, which is sort of that formal articulation of what that place is. There aren't currently plans for major change at the Preston City Oval. We are working to deal with some persistent vandalism challenges at the moment, so we don't regard that as a major change, but it is something we're hoping to tackle in the next wee while.
Thank you, and I think Vanessa Petrie is going to answer the last question.
Thanks, Chris. So for your last question, the state government has finalised its plans to facilitate new retail, housing and ongoing market use in the precinct. The planning controls require 3,700 square metres of new open space, along with a financial contributions in the Preston Market precinct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Frank Krupi?
I have 3 questions. I live in the catchment area, the activity centre, and so far my neighbours and I have not been consulted. We have had very little detailed information on the planning controls and how they will impact our properties. Will council demand that the state government stops the changes being gazetted later this month so that the community has a chance to have a real say before they are implemented? Second question. Why has the state government been so secretive about the details of these new planning controls, and has the council publicly challenged them? Third question, why has the council not bothered to inform the community about the proposed planning controls and helped residents to fight back against some of these changes in the same way it helped the community to fight back to save the Preston market? Thank you.
Vanessa?
Thank you, Frank, for your questions. And through you, Mayor, with your first question, the state government is updating planning controls for the Preston Activity Centre, and the state conducted community consultation on their draft plans, so they're best placed to answer questions about how this was run. On the 14th of August last year, Council resolved to advocate for inclusive and transparent engagement by the state government in its activity centre program. And this evening, Council will consider its position. Regarding your second question, we have limited information about the state government's plans that were announced in the media over the past week, and we're working to understand what it means for Darebin, and we'll continue to keep the community informed as more information becomes available. And regarding your final question, there is a state government process, and Council is working on a range of measures outlined in the Preston Centre Activity Centre report included in tonight's agenda to promote inclusive and transparent engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask for a procedural motion, please, to extend public question? Councillor Greco and seconded by Councillor Jelly. All in favour? Thank you. Okay. Carried unanimously. The other Frank. Frank Mitchell.
All right, the other Frank. Okay. All right, first question. Under item 9.2 bracket 7 in the undisclosed draft MOU, Council refers to a desire for communal public open space. Can this be elaborated upon in terms of site specificity and how the Council is classifying communal public open space? Second one. The enormity of the proposed population and dwelling increases will place even greater pressure on the already under-resourced public open space and community infrastructure assets. How does Council propose to use the additional funds made available through the mechanisms mentioned in item 9.25D, given the numerous calls from the community for public acquisition of the centrally located Preston Market site? And third question. Do you think that the City of Darebin has been asked to bear a disproportionate burden in the number of dwellings required compared with other municipalities as a response to dealing with over 2 decades of neglect by state and federal governments in maintaining sufficient quantities of dwellings in our capital cities?
Thank you, Frank. And over to Vanessa Petrie.
Thank you, Frank. And through you, Mayor, regarding your first question, communal open space is referred to in the officer's report at item 9.2 about Council's proposed floor area ratio in Preston Central. So a floor area ratio provides flexibility in building form to encourage developers to provide communal open spaces on private land, and this is open space for use of residents within a development. And regarding your second question, the state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds for infrastructure, including transport, schools, open spaces, and community and health facilities. These will be collected from the 1st of January in 2027, but we don't yet have details to know how this will work. There is a municipal-wide and a Preston Market Precinct development contribution plans in place, and that helps Council fund local infrastructure such as paths, roads and community facilities. Regarding your third question, the Technical Officer submission at Appendix D of tonight's item at 9.2 notes the higher housing target for Preston Activity Centre compared to other pilot centres, and asks the state government to ensure the dwelling target is appropriate for the local context and infrastructure capability. The state's announcement last week in their announcement, the state government reduced the heights within the outer catchment area, but they have not yet released an updated housing target for the centre.
Thank you.
Thank you. George Kanjir. Thanks, George. You've got 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So Preston Market is of central importance, obviously, to the area, and the community's fought very hard to keep it. However, the state government is apparently completely excluding the Preston Market development from the VPA Activity Centre planning process. Does Darebin Council agree with the cleavage of planning regulations between the proposed VPA Activity Centre and the planning overlay for Preston Market? And if so, why is that? My second question is that Darebin, and particularly Preston, already has a lack of public open space, and the VPA activity plan does not have any adequate plan to address this. Does Darebin Council take responsibility for the exacerbation of this problem that will be the outcome of the current VPA activity centre plan? And my third question is that the Preston community is largely unaware of the VPA activity centre plans, and those that are have strong concerns about the shallow and superficial consultation, which has been referred to already, shallow and superficial consultation, which has been used to justify, it's going to be used to justify that going ahead with this massive intensification. Those consulted were, as the previous questioner asked about, largely white, except for myself and one other Asian person there. What does Council plan to do to ensure that the community is aware of the VPA activity centre plans? And given the lack of real consultation, how can we as residents have input into the activity centre plans?
Over to you.
Thank you, George, for your questions. Through you, Mayor. With your first question, George, it is common for strategic redevelopment precinct to be planned separately to other established areas, and Council has asked that the state's planning controls consider the interface between the commercial core and with the Preston Market. Regarding your second question, the Preston Central area is identified as an open space gap area in Council's open space strategy called Breathing Space. Council recently endorsed a planning scheme amendment to enable up to a 5% contribution for subdivisions and has requested approval from the Minister for Planning. And Council is also reviewing the open space strategy to support pursuing an open space levy that would be higher than 5%. Excuse me for a moment. Regarding your third question, it's still your second question, apologies. The state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds, and as I have shared earlier, that will start on the 1st of January 27, but we don't have the details yet about how it's going to work. The planning controls for Preston Market requires 3,700 square metres of new open space as well as financial contributions for the precinct. And regarding your third question, the officer's report this evening at item 9.2 sets out recommendations for ongoing engagement and advocacy with the state government to support the best outcome for Preston and for the community.
Thank you. We've now got Suzanne Newton, who is attending virtually. Oh, there she is. Over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you. So I've got 3 questions. My first is, will Council make it clear what percentage of housing in the Preston Activity Centre should be social and affordable housing? If not, why not? 2, how will Council advocate for and ensure the local community and Council can have a genuine voice in the development of the new activity centres when so many planning powers are being removed from local government by state government? And my third question is, how will Council push for state government to fund the needed infrastructure and services for a massively growing population with so many thousands of new apartments being built in one area? Thank you.
Thank you. And Vanessa?
Thank you, Suzanne, for your questions. Through you, Mayor. The state government is preparing the plan and planning controls for Preston Central through its Activity Centre program. Council is advocating for Preston Central to include social and affordable housing. Only a summary of the state's plans have been released. Details about social and affordable housing has not yet been released. The officer's report at item 9.2 sets out recommendations for ongoing engagement and advocacy with the state government. And regarding your third question, through our engagement and advocacy with the state, Council has highlighted the need for new and upgraded local infrastructure to meet the needs of the growing population. The state government will create a new way for developers to contribute funds, which will start on the 1st of January 2027. There is a municipal-wide and Preston Market Precinct Development Contributions Plan in place to help Council fund local infrastructure like paths, roads and community facilities.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Gertz Hendricks, who is not able to attend, so may I please have Gert's question read out, please, Jodie? Number 12.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Gert's first question is, can Council provide an itemised overview of all expenditures towards the budget provided in 2024 for the execution of a feasibility study for the master planning at 2 Wingrove Street, and advise when this will be concluded, and will the report be made publicly available? The second question is, multiple spaces at 2 Wingrove Street remain underutilised. 2024 EOI approvals remain stuck with slow town planning processes. Can Council provide an update on when they expect to finalise the town planning applications, and if and when a new EOI will be opened for the spaces in Shed 1D that remained unlicensed during the previous EOI process for Wingrove Street? And the third question, what is the latest of the promised transparency report about 2 Wingrove Street for the period 2022 to 2024, and when can the community receive this?
Rachel, Olivia, can you please answer those questions?
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks for the questions, Gert. The feasibility study is in progress and expected to be completed by the end of this financial year. We're planning to share the results with Council and the community when they're completed. We publish annual financial reports every year, but we don't generally publish that sort of itemised expenditure detail for every project. What I can confirm is that a contractor has been engaged and is currently undertaking building condition assessments. Geotechnical and town planning feasibility work is also being done. We're expecting the project budget to be tight and are currently managing it closely. In terms of your question about town planning and any opportunities to lease parts of the site, certainly we'd encourage any applicants to reach out directly to the planning team to inquire about the status of their applications. Details of individual applications aren't things that we can share publicly, and I will ask someone to reach out to you in the next day or two directly. Council is preparing to run an expression of interest process for a range of properties across Darebin, including at 2 Wingrove Street. That's currently scheduled for consideration by Council in April and would be promoted in May to the community. And your final question, I understand one of our team reached out to you today to clarified that your question relates to the decision made by Council at its meeting on the 12th of February 2024, which made public all confidential decisions during the Council term relating to 2 Wingrove Street. The confidential decision was published at the Council meeting of the 27th of May 2024, and details of that can be found on our website in the Council meeting agenda section.
Thank you. Next, we have Miranda Sharp, who is online. Welcome, Miranda. Would you like to ask your question?
Thanks very much. My I'm a member of the Alphington Commons, a community-led coalition of about 1,600 local committed residents, enterprises and community groups committed to the future of number 2 Wingrove Street, Alphington, the subject of the previous questions. It's our view that the 3 options before Council for decision-making tonight, agenda items 9.8, are somewhat unsatisfactory and fall short of a meaningful community engagement. Today, we submitted a proposal to all councillors directly, proposing the establishment of a community advisory group to assist in the facilitation of a community lens all the way through the master planning process for number 2 Wingrove Street. It's proposed that this group would be established now and develop a framework for that very community consultation and presents a value for money solution to ensuring all voices are heard through the placemaking, in the placemaking process. So my question is a hopeful one that Council will seriously consider this proposal, which is made with very good will and intention to maximise the opportunity of this wonderful site.
Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you.
Rachel, would you like to respond to that one?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Miranda. We've taken your question as feedback. I can confirm that Council will consider the matter tonight.
Thank you. We have a question from John Nugent, who is not attending. Jodie, would you be able to read the question out?
Thank you, Mayor. John's question. Mayor, Council has advised they have recognised the extra lighting around the new Keon Park station. Could you please advise me when the lighting will go through Donmouth West Reserve for the safety of the general public who walk in the park at night?
Thanks, Jodie. And Rachel, Olivia, can you respond to that one?
Thanks, Mayor. So this is a matter for Council to consider when it considers its budget. There will be an opportunity to make a submission through the budget consultation, and I'd encourage any interested residents to participate. That said, Council has a tight budget and typically receives many more requests for improvements than it has funding available. And for that particular area that you're talking about, the long-term plans at that site don't include extending the pathways or the lighting.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the public questions. Thank you so much to everyone who came along and asked questions. It's always very helpful for us as councillors to hear your concerns. And hopefully those who are asking questions around the Preston Activity Centre have got a bit more of a picture of the advocacy that Council is doing at this point in time in what is still a moving kind of feast at the moment. But there's plenty more in the report about that. So we're going to move on to submissions. Okay, sorry. So the submissions we will present at the time of the item on the agenda. And petitions. So we do have one petition this evening. Councillor Dimitriadis, I believe you were going to put that one forward.
Yes, sorry, Mayor. Sorry, the petition before us is about Gilly Street, Fairfield, and was raised very recently with me, not providing me suitable time to fully investigate if I have a general conflict of interest due to the proximity of the location to my place of residence. While I don't believe I have a conflict of interest based on prior legal advice on similar locations, in the interest of transparency and to avoid any perception, I will be leaving the chamber while this matter is being dealt with. I wanted to thank Councillor Boglis for moving this petition regarding the interest of the South East Ward. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Councillor Boglis. Okay, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I seek to table a petition concerning safety review of Gillies Street, South Fairfield, to be referred to the CEO for consideration and response. The petition has been signed by approximately 21 people and complies with the Council's governance rules and requests that the City of Darebin conduct a safety review in Gillies Street, Fairfield, South section, between Heidelberg Road and Railway Place to eliminate the threats posed by the excessive speed and high volume of rat running non-resident traffic in our signposted local residents only street. As an integral part of this safety review, the residents request comprehensive consultation with Gillies Street South residents on a range of safety measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boglis. Do I have a seconder to tabling of the petition? Councillor Salkos. I now call on Mark Dupé as the submitter of the petition to make a 2-minute submission. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, the petition is pretty straightforward, but look, I'm a 30-year plus resident of Gillies Street. It's certainly changed over a lot over the years. We used to be able to, I brought up my kids kicking the footy out on the street. We just can't do that now. The past 10 years, there's been a lot more traffic using this section of Gillies Street to bypass the traffic lights at the corner of Heidelberg Road and Station Street. And it's got so much worse since the bike lanes were installed on Heidelberg Road. Certainly in the afternoon peak hour, the traffic just pushes right up Heidelberg Road, and it's just encouraging more high-speed traffic running down Gillies Street. And in turn, that's resulted in a dangerous pedestrian crossing at the corner of Gillies and Railway Place. So council officers have previously reported that section of the intersection of Gillies Street and Railway Place is dangerous. And even later this evening, you guys will be addressing this further under item 9.4 of your agenda, where $300,000 has been earmarked to address this intersection. So what we're asking for is that the actual root cause of the problem, being the speeding and rat running of the cars, is also addressed, because that's what's causing the actual dangerous intersection in the first place. So it just seems crazy not to address that, the root cause. So we're not advocating for a particular traffic measure, but rather a consultative, holistic approach needs to be taken to address the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'll now put the motion to the vote that the petition be tabled and referred to the CEO for consideration and response. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Can someone please let Councillor Dimitriadis come back in? Welcome back, Councillor Dimitriadis. The petition was tabled and was unanimous acceptance of that. So, I think we now on to the business of the meeting, I believe. Yep, consideration of reports. So the first one is Reservoir Leisure Centre scoping study. We just got that one up. So are there any questions of officers regarding this item? So questions of clarification. So if no questions, we will commence the debate. Councillor Salkos, would you like to put forward a motion, or have you got a question?
I would like to move an alternate motion.
Yep. Okay, so that's up on the screen now. Okay, do we have a seconder to that motion?
Mayor, yeah, that's not the right motion.
Ah. Sorry,
It's
that's a
points
different
1,
one.
2 and 4 only. Oh, no. It's the one I circulated at 3:48.
Have we got that one? I think, is that it? Okay. So are you suggesting you want to? Yep. So
Yes,
do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Arturi. Okay. Are there? Does the mover wish to speak?
I do. Thank you, Mayor, and through you, I'll try to keep this brief. As everyone knows, Reservoir Leisure Centre is spoken quite regularly here at Council. Reservoir Leisure Centre is actually in my ward, and it's great for me to stand here today in favour of both noting the Reservoir Leisure Centre scoping study, which includes the recommended next steps, and also the release of the scoping study to the community. In addition, point 3 is in regards to the motion we passed on the 16th of December last year. And I wanted to thank our Mayor, who has been having regular meetings with both our state and federal members advocating for Reservoir Leisure Centre. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak?
I reserve my right, Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak in opposition of the motion? No. Are there any others who wish to speak? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment that was circulated earlier today. The numbering of the ordering of the amendment may change slightly. I would like to leave the extra point that's been raised by the previous councillor that spoke on this, and include my point, the point 3 and point 4 back into the substantive motion. So you have point 1 as it is, point 2 as it is, you'd have point 3, then point 4 will be what was moved by previous councillor, and then point 5 would be my amendment. And my amendment technically is also point 3, which was incorporated by the officers.
So 3 and 4 are actually the same. Yeah.
4 is Councillor Selkos, so 3 would be removed like it was in.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So can I go to the move of the motion? Do you accept this amendment?
No.
Okay. Sorry, just let me have another read of it.
Mayor, can I ask you a question? Is that inappropriate? So the point 3 notes that that you wrote to the federal and the member for Cooper and the member for Preston.
That's right.
And Councillor Salkos has informed us that you have been meeting with them regularly. So what would be gained by requesting a formal response? Like, is this, I don't know, maybe this is not a question for you, maybe this is a
Who was
question
the
for
question
Councillor
to?
Greco.
Yeah, is that to councillors? I will allow you to ask a question if you want to ask the staff.
Yeah, so perhaps, yes, if the staff could comment on whether it would, what would we be gaining from having a formal response from the members to at this point in time, given there are discussions that are ongoing.
I might answer that, Mayor, if that's okay. So through you, Mayor, so I guess I can only speak factually and what's occurred. So we haven't had a response from either of the local members as yet. I guess I'd comment that we're in the midst almost of a federal election, and I'd be surprised if a response were coming formally. We may find out in other ways potentially how that would come through. As far as Glen Ira's example, so I guess that's highlighting that there are two potential funds. So these are grant applications, not anything else, and it outlines the Community Infrastructure Loan Scheme, which is a interest-free loan from the state government, and the federal government's Priority Community Infrastructure Program, which are both current schemes, neither of which that are open at the moment. So I don't see it would make a whole lot of difference at this point in time.
Okay, I think it is an amendment. So is there anyone who'd like to second that motion? No. Okay, so we go back to the first motion. Councillor Salkos's motion. So we've got to move in a seconder. Are there any other speakers to this motion? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to support this motion and just to point out that that the scoping report comes after almost 6 years of a whole series of reports. It goes back to 2018. We've had about 5 or 6 reports on the Reservoir Leisure Centre, all in their own sort of way, have all sort of justified the need for a Reservoir Leisure Centre. And we just keep moving from one report to another report to another report, but we're gaining very little traction. But I welcome this report because it highlights some new points. The points that it does highlight is that Reservoir has a very significant population. Over 55,000 people live in Reservoir. And what's most interesting is that it has a large concentration of young children from 0 to 6 years old who would make really good use of a Reservoir Leisure Centre. It's very much valued by the community, and also the report highlights the excessive maintenance that the centre needs given of its age. I recognise that there are financial constraints on the council. We'll be talking about that later. What my amendment was trying to do is that, as has been previously mentioned, we have written to the MPs. Yes, we have done that.
Sorry, can you stick to this motion, please?
Yeah, I will be sticking to this in terms of what we need to do to go to the next step. But the report mentions that we would need to seek funding in order to make this a reality. So that goes to my point that I'm addressing now, is that we need a response both from our federal MP, Jed Carney, particularly now that there's an election about to be called, where that could make a nice...
You need to wind up, councillors.
Sorry?
You need to wind up.
Sorry?
You need to wind up.
Okay, because a few seconds of it. So I'll just wind up in 15 seconds. So it's a great opportunity. There's a federal election and be a great opportunity for the federal member to step forward and promise this council a substantial amount of money for the Reservoir Leisure Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Sangster, you'd like to speak?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I'd just like to also speak in support of the motion. As we all know, the RLC is a beloved and cherished community asset, needing significant investment. And we, as a council, are determined to find a way to make this happen, which is really exciting. This report is another important step towards our desired outcome of an expanded, functional and vibrant RLC, which suits our diverse and growing community. I'd also like to note that council will be asked to consider the inclusion of targeted facility upgrades and continue to advocate, as we have mentioned already, for funding partnerships both for locally and at state level.
Okay. Did you want to take up your option to speak? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what is clear from this report, after the many years of work and report that Councillor Greco has alluded to, is that RLC is indeed a valued part of our local community, in particular in the north of the city, in Reservoir. We've got membership numbers increasing and use of the centre increasing as well. But of course, that comes with its challenges. It is in need of an upgrade, and I think I'm quite confident in saying that if an opportunity arose, whether that be a partnership with federal or state government, whatever the case might be, given the funding restraints currently on council, that this council would support that wholeheartedly. And I think that's a very important message to send to our community, and I look forward to supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Salkos, did you want to add anything to close the debate? No. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to take it to the vote then. So all of those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Okay, the next motion relates to the Preston Central Activity Centre. Okay, so we have 3 submissions. So, so the first up I call on is Chris Erlandson. Can you come up to the lectern, please, Chris? You've got 2 minutes to make your submission.
The community is extremely concerned about the lack of transparency and information around the implementation of the state plan of the activity centre. The community wants to see council take a stand and truly represent people of Darebin, and more particularly the residents within the identified catchment area. We urge the council to demand that state government puts a hold on the process to stage additional CRG meetings assured to us at the last CRG meeting. It is unlikely that the council should... If this is unlikely, the council should at least initiate staging a forum to inform locals impacted within the catchment area of what the state government's intentions are. We are incredibly disappointed that the extent of the activity centre is excessive, effectively stretching the distance of 4 railway stations, that is Thornbury, Bell, Preston and Regent, and we would rather see the catchment area scrapped or at least reduced back to council structure plan. We support council's preferred option to concentrate development nearest the activity centre core for the effective management of the interface between the activity centre and the catchment area. I'm going to jump a couple of points because I'm going to run out of time, I think, but in the 9.2 on the agenda item, the officer's report states to ensure open space provisions are sufficient to match population growth. In this regard, we say council must look at 3 things. A, increasingly open space, the open space levy from 5% to up toward 10% as soon as possible. B, increasing the quantity of open space in the area through the public acquisition of Preston Market that should be seriously entertained. And C, to ensure that the funds raised in the developer's contribution and the open space levy be spent nowhere else but in the High Street Preston Activity Centre. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Carmel Davies to come up to the lectern now, please. Carmen, you've got 2 minutes.
Hi. Darebin has been lumbered with up to 15,000 dwellings, the highest number of any apartments out of the 10 activity centres. Why are we being forced to carry this burden? Our skyline is already filled with towers and cranes. Our high street is shadowed by looming towers with little or no setback, and there's a general agreement that the Plenty Road High Street intersection build is an urban disaster. Planning decisions have been top-down and undemocratic. The VPA community consultation we all attended in this last November was a sham, and we've still got no detail on the size of dwellings, where they will be, or their quality. Worst of all, there are no targets or guarantees for social or affordable housing. How's that? And the government appears to be giving a blank cheque to developers to build what they want, while fast-tracking applications with few controls. So, if Preston density is to be massively increased, where's the open space? We urge the council to inform the government on the need to acquire Preston Market, as this would provide substantial open public space that's already lacking. This would be the lungs for our massive development. We also urge council as a matter of urgency to call for a public meeting to inform the community of what's about to be dropped on them, largely unawares. We just heard about a commitment to inclusive and transparent engagement. In common language, does this mean real engagement, like a public meeting where people could voice their opinions and actually listen to councillors speaking? In November, the 7:30 report on the ABC, Professor Michael Buxton said the housing reform was pulling down what makes the city great and would not provide affordable housing. We'll end up with a completely different city. We'll lose much of what attracts people to Melbourne, and what we're going to get is a third or fourth rate city.
Carmel,
Sonia Kilkenny, last point, Sonia Kilkenny, our minister, said, oh, the skies are not going to fall down. This was making light of the community concerns. And if it does fall down, we won't be able to see it because there'll be an explosion of towers across our horizons.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I now call on George Kangia. George, are you here? No? Okay. All right. So, councillors, do you have any questions in relation to any questions? Yes? Councillor Arturi.
Thank you, Mayor. Noting the need for properly representing the community through this process, what does the ongoing advocacy from council look like?
Thank you, Councillor Arturi, and through you, Mayor. In the immediate future, Councillor, the state government has not yet gazetted and shared the final built form, so we are recommending that we write to the minister and seek a meeting. One of the key outcomes in council's own structure plan is to introduce a floor area ratio, which we consider can deliver a really good outcome for the built form and the place in Preston. In our report this evening, Councillor, we are also recommending that in that letter to the minister, that we ask, that we do note that community consultation is central to the state's ongoing program, and that the new catchment zone should be reviewed in consultation with councils and the community 18 months following its introduction to ensure outcomes are actively monitored. We are also recommending this evening that the CEO continues to negotiate a memorandum of understanding. So in December 2023, Council did endorse the CEO commencing negotiations with a view to enter into an MOU on a range of matters, and one of those is also support for placemaking as well. So that would be, we'd recommend another important way forward for working with the state government for Preston.
Any further questions? Sure. Is there any further questions? No? Is that a question? I have a question. Yes, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, I have two questions. One question is just to get an understanding and a sense of proportion. Do we know what the population of the Preston Activity Centre currently is now? And also, do we have do we know the number of dwellings currently now in the Preston Activity area?
Thank you. Is someone able to answer that?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. We don't have information on the current population of the Preston community, but the forecast population is 15,300 new dwellings, which would contribute to an additional population in the centre.
If we don't have the current population, can we just get an understanding of what 15,300 new dwellings will translate into in terms of people?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mayor, again. Because we don't know the dwelling types, the number of bedrooms, etc., it's unclear what the population is likely to be. As a general rule of thumb, however, you could multiply the number of dwellings by about 2, making it about 30,000 people.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a
May I have another question, if I may? Again, through you to our officers, for the benefit of councillors, also for the benefit of the community that's come to this meeting today, can our officers outline how significantly different is the government's Preston activity area with the catchments is to the council's proposed structure plan, which was endorsed in December 2023?
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Greco. Through you, Mayor, I might start to answer, then invite my colleague to also respond. We just have a broad overview from the state government on the potential alignment with the activity centre, and until the state government releases the full details, it's we can't answer that question in full, but I might pass over to my colleagues to add to that.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. And through you, Mayor, I will add to what Vanessa has just said. Council's draft Preston Central Structure Plan planned for the core of the centre only, so that's the commercial spine, which makes up a lot of the commercial properties. What the state government has done is actually extended the Preston Activity Centre in a essentially 800-metre wide catchment around that commercial core, capturing a lot of the lower density residential dwellings around that. So that's the crux of the difference between the two plans. But like Vanessa mentioned, we don't actually have the details for the core catchment yet either, other than that they do tend to align with the overall heights in our draft structure plan.
Mayor, look, I want to thank the officers for their questions, and I'm happy to move a motion in relation to this.
I don't think I've called for that yet. I just want to add that actually, in terms of targets, this is not according to the age, so I'm not saying an authorised, not from the state government, but the target has been decreased by about 3,000 households. So that was just to get that information out, I guess. Now I'm going to call for Gaetano Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternate motion that should come up on the screen. And all the changes are in red.
Is that the bottom of that?
And the motion was circulated earlier today, and I'm glad that some councillors have actually offered some input, which I've incorporated as much as I can into the motion.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Okay, so that one has passed. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bogles. So if we go back to the officers' recommendation.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Oh, sorry.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jelly, thank you. Yeah, would you like to speak to it, Councillor Bogles?
Thank you. 3 times lucky. It's a pleasure to rise today to speak in support of the officer's recommendation for the Preston Activity Centre, a critical project for our community and a key step towards addressing the pressing housing needs in our municipality. I've seen High Street Preston change over a 40-year period, walking up and down Murray Road from my grandparents' home in our favourite market stalls, which are still here today. The nostalgia and childhood memories will always be there, but it's time for growth for our community. This is why it's essential that we guide its development with a clear focus on affordability, green spaces, liveliness, and community wellbeing and improvements, making sure families and individuals have affordable housing close to amenities, all of which so many of us have heard leading into the election last year from our neighbours. The Preston Activity Centre is a focal point for growth and opportunity in Darebin, and it's essential that as we move forward, we do so with careful consideration of both the needs of our community and the strategic frameworks that guide us. This includes the Victorian Government's policies on affordable housing, the Darebin Housing Strategy, and the Preston Central Structure Plan and Open Plan Strategy. These documents set clear direction for sustainable and inclusive growth in our municipality, and I'm proud to support this proposal that aligns with these goals and with transparency and community at its core. We must ensure that the development of this area involves all stakeholders, residents, businesses, and the wider Darebin community in the decision-making process. This engagement and consultation and advocacy will be essential in ensuring their needs are heard and respected as we move forward with this important development. By supporting this motion today, councillors, this isn't just about planning, it's about creating a new space that benefits our diversity, our residents' needs, and a space everyone moving into or visiting to enjoy also. So I'm moving the officer's recommendation and the release of the report to the community today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In supporting this motion, I think it's very important for us to release these reports that are contained in the agenda papers tonight so that the public can see the work that council staff undertook to advocate for our local community. And for reference, page 26 of the agenda papers provides a good one-page summary of those submissions for those who are looking for a quick overview. It's particularly concerning that the state government made this significant announcement at a time when councils, and specifically elected council representatives at the local level, could not make any official response, noting that Darebin Council is just one of many who are affected by these activity centres' decision. This calls into question the transparency of the state government announcement. These plans propose to bring significant change to Central Preston, as is noted in the motion. Council's own draft plan for the Preston Activity Centre have not been reflected in the announcements that we've seen so far. And in fact, there's so little detail in what's been announced so far that we can hardly call it anything more than an announcement at this point in time. It's important that we continue to work with the state government to ensure that the interests and concerns of our local community, and we've heard many of those voices here tonight, so that we can ensure that their voices are heard in the broader context and we can amplify them to the state government. It's also important that council advocates very strongly for high quality homes to be built. Many in our community are requesting affordable housing, but just because people can't afford to own or rent a 3-bedroom house in Darebin doesn't mean that we should be happy for them to live in a leaky, dark, dank shoebox with little access to communal space that actually brings a sense of community to what will become these virtual neighbourhoods. So in supporting this motion, I can confirm that Darebin Council is committed to ensure that our community's voices are heard and amplified as we continue to engage with state government over the future of Central Preston.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers in opposition? Councillor Greco.
Councillors, it's really surprising to see what's being moved here tonight as a motion without any critique whatsoever of what the state government is trying to do. What we're about to be hit with at the end of this month is one of the biggest things to ever hit perhaps Preston, definitely, and Darebin at large. We're looking at up to 11,300 new dwellings, possibly 30 to 35,000 new people living in our area. And there's nothing against development in our city. But what we have here is that we have no critique on the part of council in relation to what the state government's tried to do. The previous speaker mentioned a few of those things, but it surprises me that the Greens are supporting what the state government is doing. What my motion was going to try and do was, one, is to push back on the speaking against is to push back on the state government, like we deserve to push back, like the community expects us to push back in order to achieve a better outcome. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. The other thing that my motion was trying to do, and as was mentioned here tonight, many people in our community, particularly in that 800 metre catchment area, don't know what's going to hit them. And so what the motion, my motion was trying to do was actually inform people by writing to them to tell them what the government was trying to do. And the other thing that my motion was trying to do is that rather than allowing the state government to gazette these things at the end of the month... Councillor Greco, you need to stick to this motion, please. Sorry? You need to stick to this motion. I am, Mayor. I'm not sure why... Referring to your motion. Can you tell me where I'm not speaking to the motion there? This motion. I am. I'm speaking against the motion, so I'm raising issues, Mayor, with all due respect, against the motion. Yeah? Okay. So what I want to point out is that this is going to be gazetted by the state government at the end of the month. We don't know what the state government is actually going to gazette. We haven't been told what they're going to gazette. Also, we haven't been given the panel's report. I need you to wind up. I've given you some extra time. Yeah, and I'll just finish on this. Councillors, I think we really need to reflect on this. The community is looking for leadership in relation to this particular issue. The biggest issue to hit Preston and Darebin for the next 15 to 20 years. Thank you very much, Councillor Greco. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this matter? Does the mover want to write a reply? Okay, so just before we move to the vote, I just wanted to add, to just be clear, that the motion is literally releasing a couple of reports that were done by the officers back in September, October of last year that have not yet been made public. So it's about making those public, and it's about a plan to advocate to the government to represent our community's needs. So that's literally what this is about. So I think that's just got a bit lost in some of the conversation. I'm now going to call for a vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. So that's Councillor Arturi, Councillor Boglis, Councillor Dimitriadis, Councillor Jelly, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Sangster, Councillor Selkos and Councillor Olaris. Those against, please raise your hand. No, those abstaining, I presume. Councillor Greco, thank you. So that is passed. Okay. 9.3, High Street Streetscape Improvements Project. Do councillors have any questions in relation? Yes, you have a question, Councillor Jelly.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is in regards to a couple of the amendments that were circulated this afternoon, so hopefully officers are aware of what it is I'm asking about. So I have two questions about Councillor Greco's circulated amendments. So one, if we were to ask for this project to be paused while we wait for the state government to release its plans for the Preston Activity Centre, how long would we potentially need to pause this community consultation for? And my second question is, were there any further No, I think that is a question for another item. I will sit down.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. The planning controls for Central Preston are planned to be gazetted at the end of the month, so it would be 1 month.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to our officers through you. Given that the state government plans to gazette the new planning controls for the Preston Activity Centre, what are the implications of the new planning controls in relation to Darebin Council redesigning and redeveloping High Street from Bell Street to Murray Road? what would be the implications in us doing that blindly without knowing what the planning controls are actually going to be?
Vanessa Petrie, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. And through you, Mayor, I'll start to answer, then I'll invite my colleague, Alan, to add some more detail. High Street is an ageing road structure and it does need to be replaced, so there is an imperative to continue with that work. What officers are recommending is to build back better. So by doing this planning work with the community, we can develop a vision for the centre which will allow us to enhance the elements of the place. It will also support council moving forward, working with developers as they develop property along High Street, and also with the state government to, influence and get the best possible outcome for Preston and the community. The planning changes that will be gazetted is not expected to have a significant impact on progressing with this project because the work needs to be delivered, and I'm going to invite Alan to provide some further detail for you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for the question, Councillor, through you, Mayor. The Preston Central project that the state government's driving has got known dwelling increase numbers. So whether we wait for the gazettal of the planning controls or get going now, it's not going to dramatically change what the final release of the increase in dwelling numbers will be. So that's my advice to you. It's not going to change it much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor?
Sorry, I was just going to flag that I wanted to move a slightly amended motion for the officer recommendation once we've finished with questions.
We've just finished questions. Any questions? Okay, now I'm going to call for a motion. So,
yes, thank you. I'd like to move the motion that is on the screen at the moment. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Sangster? Would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd love to. Thank you very much, Mayor. This streetscape improvement project presents council with a number of opportunities to build back better, as our council officers have wonderfully described tonight, to build the better infrastructure to meet the future needs of our community. Central Preston is where many Darebin residents come to access core services, to shop at local businesses and to dine out. The road itself is about to reach the end of its life and it needs to be replaced. So as the officer's report notes, we have an opportunity here to improve the streetscape as a whole because of the extent of the reconstruction work needed for the road. This comes just 7 months after Council endorsed the revised climate emergency plan, so there are key crossover elements we need to consider with this project and also to seek community input on. We also need to consider how to make this street more accessible for people of all ages and all abilities. As was also noted in the report, there will be 2 stages of community consultation. The first stage aims to understand community priorities for this area, after which streetscape options will be developed and published for further community consultation at round 2. So as we've noted with the previous item that we've just voted on, the population of Central Preston is set to jump by over 10,000 dwellings, potentially up to 30,000 new people over the next 20 years, the majority of whom will be apartment residents. And those are people who will call High Street not just somewhere where they come to shop and access services, but for them, High Street will be their home. And I do note that apartments are people's homes, and we should be mindfully respectful about how we discuss people's homes in this chamber. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from people who currently live in apartments, particularly around South Preston and other areas nearby within Darebin. So currently about 9% of Darebin residents live in apartments, and it's normally quite challenging to engage those residents in community consultation. So the second point of my motion here, I have clicked somewhere strange. So the second point of this motion aims to ensure that we put the effort in to reach those residents through this consultation. So I believe that these residents actually have a lot that we could learn from on how to ensure that an activity centre, a street such as this, a main thoroughfare, can actually work well as people's homes in high density living areas. So with the big changes slated for Preston, I think we've got a great opportunity here to ensure that streetscape designs will enhance the quality of life for those who will soon or in future years be calling High Street home. And I note that it's our duty to ensure that we are making decisions on behalf not just of the current residents in Darebin, but also of the future residents who are yet to come and call this amazing place home as we do and love.
Thank you. Councillor Sangster, did you want to talk to the motion?
I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone to speak in opposition? No? Any other speakers? Yep, Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor. Rise to support the motion moved by Councillor Jelly, and it is an important second clause that she has tacked on the end there. High Street was voted the coolest street in the world, I believe. Was it last year or the year before, perhaps? And I think that we can all agree that a massive part of its coolness, let's say, is the diverse and multicultural aspect of that community right along this major arterial in our community that all of us use pretty often, I'd say, especially coming here every week. It's a really important opportunity that we get out and commence this first stage of community engagement on this really important improvement project, and I'm keen to see the results of stage 1 and 2 of that engagement.
Thank you. Councillor Greco.
And thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak in favour of the motion. I'm really excited about us engaging the community on such an important strip of High Street, which is basically the core of Preston, particularly from Bell Street up to Murray Road. The street needs redoing, as we know. It's very lumpy and at various points, and it also looks very tired after so many years that it's been in that state. I'm just hoping that through the consultation process, particularly with the diverse community that live and breathe High Street, that we'll be able to also explain to them the massive plans for the Preston Activity Centre, and that then that information is provided to them, so that the feedback that we get from them actually is cognizant of that context, because I think that would actually impact on how people see the street working, and in relation to the vast number of people that are expected to move into the area by 2041.
Thank you. If there's no further speakers, I'm going to move to the vote. Great. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Safer Local Roads and Streets Program grant. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Jelly, would you like to ask a question of the staff?
Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor. Could officers just confirm if there were any further projects in Preston and Reservoir that could have been included in this list? I understand there was quite a rigorous process that you went through in terms of determining what we had that might have been ready to go, that met with the eligibility criteria for the grant. I just wanted to see if there was, what else was in there. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Jelly, through you, Mayor. The team worked very diligently to review all of the endorsed projects and projects that have been developed in response to council decisions, and there was no additional projects that were eligible for the grant funding that were possible to be nominated in the Preston and Reservoir area.
Any other questions? Councillor Greco?
Just a question through you, Mayor, to our officers. I just want to understand a little bit more how the projects that have been selected, which from my counting, 80% are in either Thornbury, Northcote or Fairfield, how that is an equitable decision and in line with our council plan that talks about the equitable distribution of infrastructure and livability within our city.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Greco, and through you, Mayor. These projects are a result of previous work that Council does, including Your Street, Your Say, areas A and B, and some previous work stretching out before that. So Council is currently working through Your Street, Your Say, Area C, and unfortunately that timing doesn't align with this opportunity. What this grant opportunity does enable Council is to, in effect, potentially free up other of its own capital to potentially put in some other areas which it may like to consider as it moves through its budget process. I wanted to see whether my colleagues wanted to provide some further advice for you. No. Thank you, Councillor.
Any further questions? Councillor Greco?
Just a further question. Your Street, Your Say, we went through that in some of the northern parts of our city a couple of years ago. I suppose my question is, why was it not that some of those projects that did not make the funding requirements back then, why were they not considered as part of this funding?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor, through you, Mayor. This TAC grant program is specifically designed around safe system principle aligned road safety projects, and the program has a strong focus on improving safety for people walking and using active modes of travel. The remaining projects in Group A were not projects that supported improvements to pedestrian safety that also used a raised device as well. So the projects that have been nominated, and you can see in the report there, all align with the grant eligibility criteria, and officers have worked extensively with the program administrators to ensure they would be successful if nominated.
Thank you. Do we have a mover for the motion? Councillor Boglis?
Through you, Mayor, I have an amendment.
Is that your amendment there? Yep.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hang on a moment. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jelly. Okay, would you like to speak to that motion, Councillor Boglis?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. In 2022, the Darebin Your Streets, Your Say Group A raised concerns regarding the safety of Gilbert Road and Henty Street intersection, Edward Street and Gilbert Road roundabout, and Spring Street by May and Taunton Avenue Reservoir. Despite the severity of these issues and the potential for incidents, these areas have not been adequately addressed in subsequent plans or updates since. The following amendment I put before you this evening is one which is yet to be addressed despite community consultation back in 2022 and that this was distributed to other projects at the time. These safety concerns for community and residents have not yet been addressed, included in recent plans for infrastructure improvements. And I often observe parents with children attempting to cross these locations during peak hour and on weekends with bikes and prams by near childcare centres, Edwards Lake, sporting facilities, or by the Regent Station. If you've ever driven by Gilbert Road, both roundabouts are currently crumbling and falling apart by all the activity and the pressure placed on them, and numerous attempts for short-term patchwork measures have been made, but deterioration and safety needs still continue. Trying to get to Regent Street Station over the Preston Market via Spring Street is like playing chicken with the increased traffic volumes and the 60-kilometre speed limits, which makes crossing Spring Street extremely difficult to cross safely alone, let alone with children's bikes, prams and shopping trolleys. This feedback has also been noted and passed on to me by our local member for Preston and Reservoir, Nathan Lambert, and during my door knocking across the ward last year at numerous times. So I put to councillors this evening that we prioritise and accelerate the planning and implementation of these safety members dated back 2022, improving the traffic flow management, enhancing pedestrian crossing and facilities, clearer signage and road markings to increase visibility and reduce confusion.
Okay, does the seconder like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. This grant opportunity, this grant program, Safer Local Roads and Streets program, presents an incredible opportunity for us to, for the state government actually, to fund a wide range of street safety infrastructure projects all around Darebin, noting that there's not full equity in how they are, but sometimes you can't do everything all at once, and it's not for lack of trying from the council staff, I note. We are in a constrained fiscal environment where council had to...
Sorry, I'm going to have to get you to stop for a second. It seems we've got no feed, is that correct? We do have feed. Can we continue then? Sorry, apologies. Continue on. We are still live streaming.
That's all right. Thank you, Mayor. So we are in a constrained fiscal environment, and council had to reduce its own street safety infrastructure budget a couple of years ago. So this injection of $2 million is too good an opportunity to miss. And I should also note that the papers state that there's an additional funding available to support a trial 30-kilometre-an-hour area in the south of the municipality. So the total on offer here is actually greater than $2 million. And in supporting this motion, I note that safety outcomes in Darebin's roads are worst for motorcyclists, followed by cyclists, while motor vehicle drivers and passengers and also pedestrians fare much better, notwithstanding the issues that are raised with us quite often about pedestrian safety. So it's very pleasing to see that the pedestrian safety improvements that we have achieved in Darebin in recent years has paid off in terms of greater safety outcomes for people who are walking. And let's face it, we are all pedestrians as soon as we step off our bikes, off the tram, out of our cars, out of the train station to cross the road to our final destination. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak in opposition? No? Okay, I might just, in the interest of time, see if we can... Councillor Greco, yep.
Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment. It was circulated earlier this afternoon. My amendment is to incorporate it into the new motion that was moved by...
Incorporate that into Councillor Boglis's? Yep. Okay. Do we have a second? Oh, Councillor Boglis, are you happy to accept that amendment to your motion?
Yes, Mayor.
That was a yes? Okay.
Yep.
And the seconder?
I accept the point 6 there, but I believe that point 5 is, I don't think that that's something that we can incorporate into this, because the final decision on these grants is actually going to be made by the grant making authority, not by council. So I don't agree to point 5. Agree in principle to what it's trying to achieve, but because we're not the final decision making authority here, I don't believe it's useful to have that in here.
Okay, I might just have to get some advice, sorry.
Outside this grant process, or is your amendment about this grant, or is it just in general?
Oh no, in general.
Yeah, I think she's misunderstood.
Yeah, it's in general.
Yeah.
It's in general.
Yeah, it's in general, not this grant process, not this particular. It's just in general. Could it be that it's 6 for the equity across all of the areas?
Oh no, look, it's 80%. You say all, you're just blurring the issue. No, it doesn't cut it.
Sure.
Sorry, Mayor, just to confuse the situation. I think having some discussions here, I think I will be happy to accept point 5 as well.
Okay.
Can we
We'll just get it right up on the
same
screen.
position as the mover of the
moment,
motion.
So it's a bit confusing otherwise. Thank you.
Just to understand, Mayor, the process, has the mover and the seconder accepted the amendment?
Yes, they have. That's right. So we're just getting it right on the screen. So would the mover... Is that correct? Is everyone happy with that now? Okay, would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, Mayor, I reserve my right.
You've already spoken. You've already spoken. Would anyone else like to speak?
Can I speak in relation to
Yes, please.
my amendment? Thank you. Thank you for the... Look, I thank the mover and the seconder for accepting the amendment. I'm really indebted to you. Look, inadvertently, what's happened is that if you take the time to add the number of activities and the amounts, about 80% are in Northcote, Thornbury, Fairfield, and only about 20% are in Reservoir in Preston. We know that Preston and Reservoir expanding populations. We talked about Preston, how it's going to be growing a lot in the next 10 or 15 years. So we need some equity here. And it's important that we get that equity. And a way of getting that equity, if we can't do it through the $2 million that's been allocated to us from the state government, we need to look within our future planning processes in relation to providing safety in our streets and see what things we can bring forward in order to create some balance in the equity. Why is that important, councillors? I think, councillors, we all have a duty to service the whole council and not particular parts of the council. In this situation, again, inadvertently, it's the richer end of our city, where I live, where I grew up in, getting the biggest slice of the cake. Whilst Reservoir and Preston, under the CEFA indexes, are the poorer end of our cities and continuously missing out on things that they ought to have not the same of, but I would argue even more of.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Arturi.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to rise, but I think I'll just want to clarify a couple of points. This is a really great opportunity to take advantage of grant funding from the state government and the TAC for road safety projects, and pretty much everything that Councillor Greco said is factually correct. I agree with pretty much everything he said. But I think just to clarify why the projects listed are the ones that are listed, it does maximise council's opportunity to get hopefully the full $2 million that's up for grabs from the TAC. It is quite a narrow criteria in terms of only projects that have gone through concept design and community consultation will be eligible for this. So we can list as many projects in the north as we want, but none of them will be accepted by the program's administrators. So I want to commend officers for putting together this list, but also note the alternate motion initially put forward by Councillor Boglis and then the further amendment put forward by Councillor Greco, which I think is really important in terms of signalling to the community that whilst we want to take advantage as much as possible of the opportunity that's presented to us by the TAC, we also, once we do take advantage of that, we want to signal the direction that we want to go in terms of projects in the north. So I commend the motion to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Just very briefly to state that the equity issue is important to everybody here right now. And yes, we can see when you add up the sums that there are some neighbourhoods that are getting priority through this for all the reasons that have just been spoken about. We've talked in meetings, and I think this is a really good chance for us to reiterate it, that we want to see this equity across everything that we're doing. It's in our plans, it's on our values, or however we state it in our existing strategy. We want to see that continue through. And in doing that, I think it gives us an opportunity to really be forthright with the community where the money is going across all of our major spend. And if that's not as clear to people as it could be, we have the opportunity to change that in the new plan and really step up our transparency. And I really hope we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like we're all in furious agreement, so I'm going to go to the vote. All of those in favour of the amendment? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay. The next item, thank you. The next item is the hard rubbish service review. Are there any... No, I've missed one. I have. I've missed the budget. So we're up to 9.5, draft budget parameters and key budget envelopes. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask of the staff to clarify any issues you might have? Yes, Councillor Greco.
I just have a question, just so that we can be clear about what is stated in the report. The report looks at various modelling. It looks at 3 levels of modelling. So just to understand and also for our community to understand the type of constraints that we're facing, I understand that a smaller capital works item, I think up to $5 million, could be accommodated within the long-term financial plan. Through you, Mayor, can the officers unpack that a little bit more so we can get some context in relation to this report?
Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you, Councillor Greco, and through you, Mayor. So the smaller investment of $5 million, what the modelling shows is that whilst it is not financially advisable, but it could be done if we find enough offsets and savings, which in the modelling we have said around 5 million savings if we find that is sustainable. So we just need to find offsets to make that investment.
Thank you. Councillor Greco?
Just another question, if I may, just to be absolutely clear, in relation to the long-term financial plan, the 10-year financial plan, am I correct in saying that in that plan that there's no mention whatsoever of any funding towards the rebuilding or the redevelopment of the Reservoir Leisure Centre?
Thank you, Councillor Greco, and through you, Mayor. So at this stage, the paper talks about draft budget parameters and envelopes. So in the current draft, if this is endorsed, we have not talked about any investment for RLC except the $80,000 that was asked of last time. But at this stage, we're only talking budget parameters and envelopes at this stage.
To clarify, it would be at a later stage that the draft long-term financial plan comes back to council for consideration, and we can't at this stage preempt what you might wish to include in that.
I suppose, if I may, just to clarify, I'm just talking in terms of the draft plan as it stands now. There's no provision in that draft plan for a redeveloping or rebuilding of the Reservoir Leisure Centre.
So I might refer to the long-term financial plan that was adopted last year, which is probably where there's any detail. There is some renewal funding in there to keep the facility in the standard it is, like with all of our facilities. There's also some unallocated capital improvements budget in the outer part of the 10 years where council has not indicated what it might spend that on or what it might not spend that on. It's not a huge amount. It wouldn't cover the full cost of a facility that you're talking about, but that hasn't been specifically allocated.
Thank you. So something for us to think about in our budget preparations. But for tonight, in terms of looking at the budget envelopes, is there any other questions, or can we Can we move to a motion? That's what you're looking for, yes. Okay, thank you, Councillor Arturi.
I'd like to move an alternate motion that was circulated this afternoon. Yep. Yeah, I think that's the one.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Boglis? Councillor Arturi, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, can I start off by thanking officers for their work on this report, or reports plural, that make up this item. It's a very important report as it sets out the parameters and assumptions for the upcoming budget and the long-term financial plan of Council. Going back for a moment to December 2024, Council expressed the importance of balancing the financial health and sustainability of Council with our ability to deliver important projects across the city. And so we asked for financial modelling to be undertaken to better explain the organisation's capacity to deliver these projects. And deliver on various, I guess, hypothetical objectives. And the Audit and Risk Committee also provided its feedback, as the report mentions. If we look to Section 5 of the consultant's report, it basically concludes that on the current financial situation that the organisation finds itself in, such hypothetical capital investments would not be sustainable or advisable, as we've heard in answers to the various questions from councillors just a moment ago. And I'd reiterate that while circumstances may change, the information that we've been provided is based on the current situation that the council finds itself in. One of the key assumptions, and this I turn to the amendment to clause 4, is the minimum cash balance of $44 million, and the amendment that I propose would reduce this to a minimum of $42 million. And this is quite a conservative reduction, which frees up some funds, a one-off, I should mention that, make that quite clear. It's a one-off, freeing up of about $2 million across 4 years, so split evenly, I guess, about $500,000 each year across the 4-year term. And of course, this figure, I've chosen this figure mainly because it sits squarely between the two pieces of advice that we've received. At the lower end, 40 million, well, the higher end rather, being 44 million, the lower end is 40, being considered a reasonable figure in the local government sector. So it's a conservative reduction that increases our ability to invest in capital over the 4 years slightly, and I think that would be welcome to many of us here today. We indeed have a lot of work ahead of us in the lead up to budget time, and I want to thank officers again for their work up until now, and thank them in advance for their guidance and work as we go through this process.
Councillor Boglis, did you want to speak to it?
I reserve my right, Mayor.
Is there anyone wanting to speak in opposition?
May I have an amendment that I'd like to propose?
Sure. So just to check, is this instead of or as well as the previous? Added to the previous or instead of?
Added to the motion that was moved by Councillor Arturi.
Okay. Councillor Arturi, do you accept that motion?
I'd be happy to accept it with some small wording changes. I'm not sure how we deal with that, Mayor, but...
Can you tell me what they are? Negotiation. Yeah, perhaps tell me what they are.
I would say the Mayor, in her discussions with the federal member for Cooper, etc., advised them, and then as the rest is written.
Mayor, it's my amendment. An amendment can't be amended by another councillor.
No. So I think we were just going to bring it back to you to see if you were happy with it.
If it's not going to be amended...
Not sure how that works, Mayor.
The intent was, councillors, that Councillor Arturi was proposing to accept the amendment and therefore become part of the motion, with a minor change to rights, to change it to the Mayor in her meetings or something, I think were the words, to see if it was acceptable back to you, rather than doing an amendment. We can do it either way.
That's new to me. I thought that when we moved an amendment, it either gets accepted as an amendment, and then if somebody else later on wants to change my amendment and add words or take away words, that's my understanding of how, 16 years here, how it's worked in the past.
Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Aturi indicated that he wasn't going to accept it with as it was, so that's back in his court.
Okay, so he's not accepting seconder, not accepting in the current form. Do we have the, yes, it's an amendment. Yeah. So I'm suggested is an amendment. So is there a seconder to this motion? Can we add the other bits in to make it clear, or are they in there?
Councillor Greco's moved it now, so Councillor
Yes,
Aturi,
it was in addition to what Councillor Aturi had moved.
Yes, that was
I'm
the
just not sure
agreement,
that's in
yes.
there, is it?
No. So it just needs Councillor Aturi's couple of paragraphs.
Okay, do we have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Jelly?
I'll second it for the sake of debate and to test on the floor if other councillors agree to accepting this. It's a bit confusing.
Yep. Okay, so does the mover want to speak?
Okay, look, thank you, and thank you for the seconding of the amendment. And all that my amendment does is that if you look at the financial modelling, it's pretty clear, councillors, that we cannot do a major project, otherwise there will be cash flow implications for the organisation. So the only way that we could do a major project that's over $5 million is if we were to get external funding, that is from the other two tiers of government, either from the state government in the form of an interest-free loan or some other form, or from the federal government in terms of the funding that they provide for community infrastructure. And we've seen how earlier on in the night, a motion that lapsed unfortunately was where Glen Ira Council received $15 million from the federal Labor government in relation to funding their pool, plus $10 million of an interest-free loan from the state government, which helped towards funding the $75 million.
Greco, can you stick to this motion?
Yeah,
please?
I'm putting arguments, Mayor, with all respect, to why I'm including this. So if I'm allowed to continue, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. So, so what this does is actually highlights to both our federal MP and our state MP that we could, that they could assist us in seeking or making some sort of commitment in providing us a substantial amount of money so that then we could try and consider within the long-term financial plan about how we can incorporate a major development of a major project for our city. It's much needed, so this will be the only option for us. So I think it's clear. I think we have to really make it clear to our federal MP and our state MP that without their contribution from the state or federal government, we would have to wait at least 10, maybe 15 years for us to even consider a new reservoir leisure centre. I know for sure I won't be around. That's guaranteed. And so I don't think it's opportune for our community to have to wait for that long. We have a federal election occurring within a couple of months. This will be a golden opportunity for our federal MP to make a commitment to Darebin, to people in Reservoir, that they're willing to put forward a substantial amount of money for this to happen into the future. So let's put the proposal to them, let's write to them, and let's see if we can get a response that will help us achieved our goal and our objective of finally delivering and creating some traction in relation to the Reservoir Leisure Centre.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yes, very briefly, Mayor. Mostly to say that I think it's really important for us to acknowledge the significant challenges that we face in trying to progress with this project, and noting that we haven't heard back. I know that, Mayor, you've been having some discussions with our local, state and federal MPs, but we haven't heard back as a council about any potential commitments. So I think it is important to note that, you know, and to have in here and in the minutes of the meeting, the significant challenges that we face if we want to pursue this seriously as an investment for the future of the north of our municipality. And I'd really encourage councillors to speak up and you know, whether they're for or against this particular motion, you know, let's have a discussion about the merits of taking this minor action.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Arturi?
Thanks, Mayor. It is indeed an important project, and I know that the purpose of sharing this modelling is, given the wording of Clause 7, is in relation to RLC rather than the broader financial issues contained in the report. But just a couple of points to make. I think our federal pretty confident that our state and federal MPs are well aware of both the challenges that we're facing generally and also in relation to RLC as well. I certainly mention it when I speak to them, and I'm whilst I'm not privy to the conversation that the Mayor has with them, I'm sure that she does as well, or that you do as well, Mayor. We have already written to them, as Councillor Jelly pointed out, and I think that working with our state and federal colleagues is more important than simply just continually writing to them and continually raising the same issue over and over again. That's the reason why I don't necessarily support this amendment, but I think the broader advocacy piece is important, and I think that's where we should be putting our efforts.
Anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay. I guess I will just add that, yes, I think we have a good relationship with our state and federal MP at the moment. I don't know that writing to them is the best way of continuing that relationship in a positive manner. We do have regular meetings and they're aware of our situation. I think Darebin also has to be considering all sorts of options for funding and partnerships that can progress this, as was highlighted in the RLC report as well. So I'm going to take this one to the vote now. Thank you. So all those in favour? Sorry, not me. So yeah, Councillor Greco, Councillor Jelly, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Sangster. All those opposed? That's Councillor Arturi, Councillor Boglis, Councillor Dimitriadis, Councillor Vasilkis, thank you, sorry, and Councillor Olaris. Okay, so that one is not carried. Okay, so we revert back to the previous motion, which removes that number 7 item. Okay. Do we have a mover? Yes. Do we have a seconder? Yes. Already spoken. Does anyone want to ask any further questions? Or sorry, does anyone want to speak to this motion? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So just briefly to talk about the picture that's presented to us. So again, yeah, thank you to the staff for the very detailed work that's brought us to this point. It's really important and helping us to get up to speed with the picture that we're facing. It isn't pretty. We have a tight few years ahead of us in this term and in the longer term 10-year projection. I think just what I wanted to add, in addition to some of the things that have been said about that already, is part of the reason that we find ourselves here is not a Darebin issue, it is a sector-wide issue. We have a number of things playing in. So we have inflation on construction costs that are making our budget ever tighter, and we know a lot of our budget does go to capital works, as it does in most local governments. So that's where we're being really squeezed, and yes, we do need to find many more opportunities to balance this picture in the years to come. I would like to just point to a parliamentary committee inquiry, the Legislative Council Economy and Infrastructure Committee inquiry, and that's raised concerns across the sector, and it's urged state government to act on rates, grants and cost shifting to help ease the financial crunch that all of the councils are facing across Victoria. And within that report, there's 48 recommendations, and many of them are very weighty and, will not be easy things to solve, but I hope there's the will there to actually look at them seriously and solve them. So by doing that, we have a genuine chance of achieving the financial sustainability that we need to achieve. Yes, we need to do lots for ourselves as an organisation, but we do need to acknowledge the sector-wide issues and find ways to work across councils, I think, to find some of these mechanisms to save money and build and improve things in collaboration with others. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to this item? Okay, so we might move to the vote then. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So that's Councillor Artur. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, 9.6, hard rubbish service review. Do councillors have any questions of the officers that you would like to raise? Okay, does anyone want to, is that a question? Yep, go ahead.
I just want to understand from, it's been some time ago, but just to be clear, in relation to the survey that was done of residents last year, I understand that the survey, and this is just a point of clarification, I understand that the survey asked residents either they wanted a blanket cover with a booking for a limited number of people, or they wanted two booked hard rubbish collections. So that's my understanding of the reading of the report. I just need some clarification on that. Because that determined, just to finish the round of question, because that determined then the end result of I think it was 54% said they favoured a book system and 47% said that they favoured a blanket cover.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for the question, and through you, Mayor. So, yes, that is how the consultation question was asked. The report in front of councillors today, option 3, is essentially the same as what was asked through the consultation. So it is there if you were to consider it. What I would say more broadly, though, is the results councils got are very consistent with results that other councils have had around Melbourne, where they find genuinely different preferences amongst their communities. So it's quite consistent with what we would expect, even if that was worded slightly differently.
Any further questions? Does anyone like to put forward a motion? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the amendment that I shared earlier on today, which is basically the officer's recommendation with a very minor amendment to make explicit that we include community feedback on their experiences of year 1 in the report that comes back to us as we head into the year 2.
Yeah, we need a seconder for that. Councillor Selkos. Okay, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm speaking in favour of the officer's recommendation with the minor amendment that we've just spoken about. This book service approach was developed to address the goal of maximising diversion from landfill, which is included in the Darebin Waste and Recycling Strategy, and it's in line with our efforts to achieve the state government's 80% waste diversion target by 2030. A trial approach gives us a chance to try something new, to meet these commitments and to assess its effectiveness to inform what suits our area best. What has been proposed is not radical or nor regressive. Offering a book collection is considered best practice by many councils, and indeed in our briefings we've been told that Darebin is only one of 4 metro councils that doesn't have a book service offering, with the other 28 councils offering either 1 or 2 booked annual collections. The planned trial booked service offers many benefits. It allows people to book a time that suits their needs, be that spring cleaning at home, replacing or disposing of key items that they've broken, or maybe when you're moving house and wanting to dispose of items to get organised. This is especially beneficial for renters who, whether they like it or not, have to move more often than homeowners. It means people that have mobility or other health issues can organise for friends, family or formal carers to support them to get ready at times that work for them, and it gives an extra free service for residents experiencing financial hardship. It gives everyone eligible access to double the amount of disposal capacity with an increase from 1 to 2 cubic metres in the free service, and people have the option to pay extra services if they want them. Having this improved approach can help people to think more about their consumption patterns, encourage them to rehome usable items through local networks, and only put out what's actually rubbish that's rightly destined for landfill. All of these represent better environmental and economic outcomes for Darebin. Book systems have proven to result in more diversion from landfill in other areas, and to me, it makes absolute sense for us to be aiming to achieve the same here. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Sangster.
I'd just like to speak in favour of the officer recommendation with Councillor O'Brien's amendment. We absolutely should proceed to the trial of the book collection service. The officer's recommendation would see higher recycling rates become possible. It honours the 54.7% of residents who would support this trial going ahead. The officer's recommendation cuts down on unsightly build-up of rubbish on our streetscape, which can be unhygienic and even dangerous. And it opens up the opportunity for people to sort through their household items in a way that is environmentally sustainable.
Are there other speakers? Councillor Salkos, you'd like to take your option? Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just speaking in favour of this motion, and also I'd just like to outline that there will be a report after the first 12 months of the trial, so we can get community feedback back, which I think is extremely important in this process. So I just thought I'll outline that for the community. Thank you.
Okay. No other speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll be speaking against this motion because I believe that we should retain the blanket cover that's been going well for the last possibly 14, 15 years in our city. We used to have a book system, and we found that the book system didn't actually work. One of the main reasons why it didn't work was associated with the demographics of our city. Many people in our community, the elderly, people whose first language is not English, were not aware of the processes in going through a book system and would often miss out in relation to getting their hard rubbish out. A blanket system alerts everybody, and so everyone then is able to participate in getting their rubbish out. The other positive aspect that we've seen over the last 10 years is the growing love for the blanket cover, because a lot of community groups and people actually use it as an opportunity to recycle, and it creates a lot of connections between people, and also and a lot of connections between neighbourhoods by doing that. The other thing too that I think I'm not really sure why we're moving to a trial system when, as part of the question that I raised, was that people voted they wanted a booking system under the assumption that they were going to get 2 free bookings per year. But that does not seem the case of what actually we are proposing as a council. So then that 54% that are saying yes, I'm not sure what they're saying yes to. They're not actually saying, or the ones they're not sure what they're actually saying yes to. So my preference would be is that we leave the blanket system and continue with that. That's what people know, that's what people recognise, and that's what the majority of people will be using in our city.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Turi.
Thank you, Mayor. I finally get to speak on the third R of the famous 3 Rs, rubbish. Councillor Greco does make some valid points in relation to the accessibility of hard rubbish and a few of the other points that he makes. But from the report that we see in the agenda tonight, we can clearly see that the community is basically split almost down the middle when it comes to one option compared to the other. We are moving towards a trial commencing on the 1st of July this year. And one of the options available to council tonight was to return to the previous system, but of course that would involve variation of contracts and things like that, which would involve significant change costs, which are probably not advisable. I'd just highlight again what Councillor Salkos said in terms of the report and the amendment by Councillor O'Brien in terms of the community feedback, which is very important to inform our decision making going forward after that trial period. I think that information will be very useful to councillors when we make that decision.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien, did you want to have a right of reply?
I guess just, very briefly to pick up on a couple of Councillor Greco's points. So I guess the definition of going well could be hotly debated in various ways. To me, seeing excessive volumes of perfectly good items going to landfill doesn't feel like it's going well. Councillor Greco talked about the book system being tried before and it not having worked because elderly people and people with English as a second language weren't aware of it. But I believe our engagement approaches have changed radically and have improved radically, and we put so much time and effort into engaging with our communities now. I think we can solve that through this. I think the will is there to make that work really well for people. And I guess the balance that we see before us is, yes, it's not 2 free services for everybody, but what we do have is 1 free service for everybody that is double the capacity. And those that can afford to pay for additional services, if they need them, they can acquire those. And those that require a second service but can't afford it, there are provisions made for them to support them through what's being proposed here. So I think it strikes the balance well between what our community would ideally want. Yes, we all want something for free if we can get it, but the reality is we have to cost this and run this effectively, and I think this does strike the balance between those two approaches. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, has everyone? Yep. So just to round off the discussion, I think for me there's been quite a lot of different points of view in terms of why people would or wouldn't support this, coming back to the preferences for one system or the other, the substantial cost in actually breaking a contract for the current trial, as well as, desire to make sure the community is heard in their thoughts, given that there was a split of opinion at the start of this. So yeah, quite a tricky decision for everyone, and I think we will just go to the vote and see where it lands. All of those in favour of the motion on the screen, please raise your hand. So that's Councillor Arturi, Councillor Boglis, Councillor Dimitriadis, Councillor Jelly, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Sangster, Councillor Salkos and Councillor Olaris. All those against, Councillor Greco. Thank you very much. That is carried. 9.7, how are we going for time? 9.7, Mary Commons and Surrounds program. Councillors, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Demetriadis.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask, why has Council prioritised the like-for-like replacement of existing and relatively new council-owned assets such as bins, benches and tables at Peters Reserve and Caddy's Corner, rather than investing in new community infrastructure, additional plantings, improved amenities across the 4 sites?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. In regards to the proposed works at each of the sites, they have been agreed upon as part of the grant application. So it was clearly outlined the scale of investment at all of the 4 sites as part of the application process. If there's further detail required, I would have to take that on notice as to specifically why those elements have been chosen, but it was certainly part of the grant process.
Thank you. Another question?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, what will happen to the replaced assets? Are they being relocated, refurbished, auctioned or disposed of?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. We certainly will prioritise reuse of equipment where we can. We've got a track record of doing that with some of our park furniture, so if the asset is in good enough condition, we'll certainly try and refurbish that as much as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Greco.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a question in relation to the consultation process, if I may ask. I understand from the report that there was letterboxing that was done to get information or feedback from the community. I just wonder, how were the sort of those hard to reach underrepresented groups? What work did we do in relation to consulting with them?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor. So just to be clear, the consultation hasn't occurred for this project, Councillor. That's part of what's being proposed tonight. There's a detailed consultation plan outlined in the report that talks about how we'll address all those hard-to-reach communities, but we haven't actually done the consultation yet.
So, sorry, maybe I misworded my question. Was that how are we proposing to consult with underrepresented groups?
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my place in the report. Sorry, Councillor. The proposed consultation is following Council's approved consultation policy, which makes sure that we are reaching cold communities, all our hard-to-reach residents as well. So there's pop-ups proposed, there's letterbox drops, there's Your Say pages, we'll have things on site. It's quite a detailed proposition in the report, outlining the steps that are going to be undertaken for consultation. So it is in line with Council's endorsed policy.
Any further questions? Councillor Salkos.
Through you, Mayor. I just have a question regarding the new plantings. And is there any long-term maintenance scheduled as part of this? Or do you see any long-term maintenance additional costings?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. So yes, with any plantings there would be additional maintenance. I would just point out that Council don't own the site that we're talking about, the larger site at Mary Common. We also don't have a lease agreement, so we're essentially acting as a delivery partner. So we're in negotiations with stakeholders at the moment regarding the maintenance responsibilities, but that would not be coming back to Council.
Any further questions, or will we move to debate? Oh, yeah, let's move to a motion, in fact. Councillor Demetriadis.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to move the officer's recommendation with a slight change. Yeah.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor O'Brien. Okay, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Demetriadis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's great that we're progressing this project. It was in 2022 that the Victorian Government committed $1.5 million towards a new vision for Mary Common. And then in 2023, Council resolved to expand the Mary Common project to include upgrades to 3 other parks, namely Caddy's Corner, Peters Reserve and Green Memorial Reserve. And tonight we are approving the commencement of community consultation for the draft concept plans for Mary Common and the new surrounds open space improvements project. These plans include the installation of new pathways, seating, understory and tree planting, along with a renewal of the existing playground at Peters Reserve, which I'm pretty sure Council already renewed a couple of years ago, hence my question to officers about what would happen to the replaced assets that are still in relatively newish conditions. And while I have some concerns about the predetermined plans that will go out to community consultation, especially in relation to the exclusion of a bike track, which I believe is part of the grant conditions, as well as much less biodiversity enhancement than I would have liked to see for a $1.5 million grant, I really look forward to hearing from the community about how these parks can be revitalised with the $1.5 million funding. Finally, a special mention should be made to the member for Northcote, Kat Theophanous, and the state Labor government for their commitment and funding of the $1.5 million to improve council parks and assets. Thanks.
Thank you. The seconder wish to speak?
Yes, just a few points, Mayor, thank you. So given the project is in South Ward, I just thought I'd cover off some of what's relevant for local residents and the many others from all over Darebin and beyond that visit this beautiful pocket of Northcote. In doing this, I'll just summarise some of the basics that haven't been already spoken to. So Councillor Dimitriadis has given us an outline of this, 4 specific locations and some of what will be included in those locations. I guess what we also need to think about, though, as we go to consultation is we all need to be cognizant, I guess, that there are some challenges that lie ahead with this, and council officers have outlined these really clearly in the report. But just for people who may not have read the report fully in the audience or at home reading it later or listening to this later, it does include the unusual circumstances, as the officers just alluded to as well, of us not being the landholder and therefore needing to work in partnership with VicTrack to progress the project that has Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Change as the funding partner. So we're a vehicle for the work to happen in ways, so it's a bit of an unusual arrangement. But the preliminary works also show that there are contamination issues at some of those sites, and that's not unusual along rail corridors, but we just need to be mindful of what that means for management of the sites as the works go on, and what can be reasonably done at them. The examples of Indigenous and native vegetation outlined in the draft concept plans is welcomed, and I think the addition of a list for the consultation definitely makes sense to make that more accessible to people. This is welcomed as an embodiment of us acknowledging and respecting the cultural importance of the Wurundjeri land on which we live and the biodiversity these plants and trees support. And I hope that we can procure these from some of the amazing Indigenous plant nurseries that we're lucky enough to have locally. Just finally, the equity and impact and assessment does outline very clearly how we're going to engage with the various communities, including Aboriginal agencies, our Darebin and Aboriginal Advisory Committee, and a number of other committees, including Disability, LGBTQI+, and Gender Equity Advisory. So I'm really excited to see this project going. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone want to speak against this motion? Any other speakers to the motion? Okay, we might move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item is 2 Wingrove Street, Alphington. Do councillors have any questions of the officers regarding this item? Okay, do we have a mover of this motion, Councillor Dimitriadis?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a slight amendment. Thanks. Oh, and it should say option 1.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Boglis. Sorry. Does the mover wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I want to thank the officers for bringing this report back to councillors after I raised a motion at the December meeting last year to include broad community consultation as part of the master planning process for 2 Wingrove Street, Alphington. Over the past few years, the future of this site has had significant public interest. However, unfortunately, last year, the former council voted against allowing the broader community to be consulted as part of stage 1 of the master planning process, and this raised concerns with many residents. I've heard from many community members over the years that they want to be actively involved in council's process of determining the future of the site. Therefore, I've raised this motion to support option 1 for council to commence a community consultation process prior to June 2025 to seek input on the site vision and future development. I believe it is important for the community to have a say before council goes out to external stakeholders about any future developments on the site. This would ensure that when council does speak to the external stakeholders, that community's feedback from the consultation is front and centre in those discussions. Without going through this process, this community consultation process, which is what option 2 and option 3 propose, external stakeholders will have extensive scope in what the future of this site would look like. While option 2 is stated to be a form of community consultation by undertaking informed level community engagement about, and I quote, the current project status, indicative timelines, upcoming milestones and future consultation rounds, this level of so-called communication does not include the community's feedback on the future of the site. It is merely telling community members general facts about the process which they should have already been told. I personally believe it is disrespectful to community members for anyone to state that community consultation should not go ahead because people may not comprehend the extent of the risks associated with this land. Most people in our community are well aware of the environmental and ground stability risks of the site, as well as council's financial constraints and the planning controls of the land. And while council is obliged to investigate these matters further, the community should not be prevented from having a say about this because of this. I note the question by Miranda tonight and acknowledge the Alphington Commons request for a community reference group to be created. According to our council's governance rules and the advice we've received, council cannot make a decision on this specific matter tonight because it would cost over $5,000 and more work will need to be done to investigate how a reference group will work, the process, the implications and the cost of creating such a group. However, if this motion tonight is passed, we will receive a briefing to consider these matters associated with creating a reference group. Thank you, Mayor, I've nearly finished. Overall, I believe it's really important that we hear from the community and include broader community consultation as part of stage 1 of the master planning process for the site, and I hope all councillors can support this.
Thank you, Councillor Demetriadis. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Look, I would just like to err the sentiments of Councillor Demetriadis, and I think community consultation, especially in this new council term, is paramount in the shifting of culture in the new council term. Trust will take time, as I note Councillor Demetriadis's point, and projects like this moving forward, speaking to community is something that is very much on our agenda as councillors. Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this motion? Councillor Sangster.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to speak against the amendment. Wingrove Street's history as a landfill site means that not all types of development will be possible. The current feasibility work is on track. The plan is to share the work publicly and that any applicants interested in participating in the OI process may do so. Option 1 would see us engaging in a consultation with a short lead time and would require that this work be outsourced, which means spending money that we don't have on a potentially disingenuous process. Rushing into a community consultation before we have all the facts would be financially wasteful and potentially emotionally cavalier. raising community hopes that may have to be dashed. Option 3 is the appropriate and financially responsible choice to make, and I believe it's disrespectful to set people up to have a say when their say may result in options that are unviable.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Jelly.
Thank you. I'm also rising to speak in opposition to particularly proceeding with option 1 here. I think this is actually, this represents sort of fast-tracking and rushing into community consultation at a point in time when feasibility studies are still in place at the moment and being undertaken. And I think this actually risks, brings some transparency risks for us. And actually rushing out to community consultation at this point in time, this financial year, which is about 3 months out from having this feasibility study completed, we hope, that actually undermines the transparency and undermines our ability to build trust with our community, because we can't actually paint the full picture of what the issues are at the site. So if we go to consultation now, we can't actually completely outline what all the potential risks are. And our community actually deserves to know exactly what the full picture is. So perhaps, yes, there is an opportunity to communicate in other ways about the full extent of the feasibility study, the risks that are being posed, and perhaps there are other ways of doing this, but I don't believe that going out to a full community consultation, actually asking the community to come back to us and present us with their ideas and their dreams and their hopes, which, as Councillor Sangster noticed, we might then have to dash. So unfortunately, I can't support this particular option on the table tonight.
Are there any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Greco.
Look, yeah, I'd like to make a few comments in relation to this. Look, in relation to point 4, the community reference group, I think that is a good methodology. It's actually a way of bringing people along in relation to a project that sometimes can be quite complex because of all the associated issues associated in relation to that piece of land. And the community reference group helps to actually work through with officers and also other experts in relation to what's feasible, what's possible, and it's also a good way of mediating what the ambition for a particular area could be. We've used community reference groups in relation to other areas of our city. I know many years ago we set up a task force, a community reference group for Edwards Lake, because there's huge expectations there about how to fix up the water quality of the lake, and the community reference group or the task force has been working now diligently with lots of experts to systemically go through how we can address the water quality and the ambience of the lake. So I think the approach that's been taken is a good approach, and particularly in an area that has a lot of interest, and like that we're able to build that trust with the community and say, we'll let you in on the ground floor and take you through the journey of what needs to happen to that space.
Any other speakers?
Mayor, can I request that once this goes to the vote, this be, we can vote on this one point at a time, or at least group points 1 and 2 together and vote on points 3 and 4 separately?
Sure, okay. Councillor Dimitriadis, do you want to write a reply? No? Okay, so we'll take it to the vote. So points 1 and 2, all those in favour raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Points 3 and 4, all those in favour raise your hand.
Sorry, Mayor, can we separate out and vote on point 3 and point 4 separately, or have you overruled?
Okay, so we've done 1 and 2. Point 3, all in favour raise your hand. So we've got Councillor Arturi, Councillor Boglis, Councillor Dimitriadis, Councillor Gaetano, Councillor Greco, Councillor Selkos, it's getting to that time of the night, Councillor Olaris, all those against, Councillor Jelly, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Sangster. Going to number 4, all those in favour please raise your hand. that one's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. We are very, very close to the end, but I am going to ask for a procedural motion to extend. Thank you, Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Jolly. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay. So 9.9 is the Gemina Alphington Community Battery. Are there any questions on this one? Yep, Councillor Dimitriadis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask whether community consultation has started yet. I believe the report said late February, but we're in March.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. No, community consultation hasn't started yet. Conversations with Gemina today is that it can start as early as tomorrow, pending the outcome of tonight's decision.
Any other questions? Councillor Greco?
Yeah, just a very simple question, just for my understanding. How would the community battery service the area beyond Alphington? How does it service, say, the northern part of our city?
We don't have a specific specific response. What I would say is that this is conceived partly as a trial, and so the idea would be that the lessons from this may be used to tackle similar challenges in other locations.
Okay.
So just a supplementary question, if I may, through you. So the energy that is conserved by the battery would then be distributed in the locality of, I'm just trying to understand maybe the technical side, will be distributed in the locality of Alphington or through subscription, or does it go into the grid, or all those sort of factors?
So I don't have a specific answer to that, so I don't have the details in front of me of whether Gemina's model is open to people from everywhere or whether it's local. What I would say is that the grid is connected across the whole of Darebin, and this particular area in Alphington is an area where they know that a battery can augment the performance of the grid overall.
Are there any other further questions? Okay. Do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Dimitriadis, and I'm presuming we've got a seconder in Councillor Sangster.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, it's really exciting to receive this report from officers and to read about the process that has occurred in such a short time frame. I wanted to thank the member for Cooper, Jed Carney, and the Federal Labor Government for this initiative. From what I've heard, the community is very excited about having this battery at the corner of Keith Street and Parklands Drive in Alphington, which is situated on the eastern end of Pitcher Park, and they're certainly looking forward to the community consultation that hopefully will start tomorrow. And I look forward to the report coming back to Council in May 2025 of Gemina's consultation with the community and options for a lease. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd also like to congratulate the staff for their great work on this project. As we all know, community batteries represent groundbreaking opportunities to truly change the traditional grid network. This battery will directly benefit up to 185 households, and it will reduce electricity costs for these households. But perhaps, Councillor Greco, we could also remind ourselves that it will reduce emissions not just for these people, but for the whole of Darebin and actually for the whole of Australia, because every little bit adds up. We act local, the impact is global. So this is an exciting initiative that could one day be rolled out further across Darebin and up into the north, so that many more householders can benefit from the storage of eco-friendly sources of energy and the lower power bills that go along with it. So I want to thank the officers for their ongoing work and look forward to how it rolls out with excitement.
Does anyone want to speak in opposition to the motion? Are there any other speakers? Okay, I'm going to take this to the vote then. All those in favour, raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor. I think we've done it. Item 10, there are no items to be tabled tonight, no notices of motion. Are there any items of urgent business to consider? No. There are no confidential reports to be considered. So I would like to close the meeting at